the 2024 presidential election, you do expect losers and winners to talk about it at least for the next couple of months. I don't really expect it to go on as long as it has, though. And what is now happening is that Kamala Harris, she has this book tour that she is embarking on. She has now sat down and had an interview where she is revealing that Joe Biden is to blame. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, she says some nice things in the book about Joe Biden as well. I mean, she ain't crazy, but she does point her finger at Joe Biden. And I want you to hear what she said. We're going to get into this clip here from Morning Joe on MSNBC. And I want to get you guys' opinion about this. I mean, I have my opinion. My whole thing is that I don't know. In my mind, it's almost as if Kamala Harris forgets that she didn't run for president in 2020 and the Democrat primary. Was Biden to blame for that too? She didn't get a delegate. Was that Biden's fault too? She was never a strong candidate. And I said that in 2020 and I said it in 2024. But what I think this is really about is the fact that things did not go as planned. Remember when Joe Biden won the presidency, the plan was, let me make it clear. The plan was that he would serve one term and then basically hand it over to Kamala or whoever was going to be his VP for the second term. That was supposed to be the plan. Biden got in there and decided he didn't want to do that. He said, I wanted to hold on to my seat. I want to hold on, right? So things did not go according to plan. If things would have went according to plan, the way that the Democratic Party would get the first female president, it was going to be done that way, where she would be a vice president and the president would hand it over to her and she would be president for that second term. Since they figured it didn't work with Hillary in 2016 when doing it that way, they figured, hey, this is the best way. And she was already chosen. When I say chosen, she was chosen by the establishment. She was chosen by the Clintons early on for the Senate before she even ran for president. So they pick out the people that they want, and those are supposed to be their stars. And basically, if all the stars line up, things will go their way, and that person will become president of the United States. The stars did line up for Barack Obama. But I would say it is because of Barack Obama's presidencies that the stars did not line up for the Democratic Party that way going forward. And now Kamala is upset. She has said some things and people are talking about it. Let's get into it.
Joe Biden and Jill Biden now. Speaking of...
Sorry, let me start from the beginning here so you can see what she said. Let me just go back here. Here we go.
The Atlantic has published an excerpt from former Vice President Kamala Harris's forthcoming new book entitled 107 Days. And in it, Harris details the challenges she faced when Joe Biden dropped out of the race and she was suddenly tapped to run for president. In it, she writes, during all those months of growing panic, should I have told Joe to consider not running? Perhaps. It's Joe and Jill's decision. We all said that like a mantra, as if we'd all been hypnotized. Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness. The stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego, an individual's ambition. It should have been more than a personal decision.
Everybody just marinate with that for a second. Sit on that. Let that marinate. Okay. So basically what Kamala Harris is saying here is that it really shouldn't have been up to Joe Biden for him to decide whether or not he was going to stay in this race, that others should have intervened and said, no, that's it. You do your one term and then you're going to just pass the baton to her. Another thing I want to mention here as well, don't forget there was no primary. They just gave her the nomination. We can't forget also that Barack Obama made it pretty clear that he didn't think that Kamala could win, and that's why he didn't want her to be the nominee. He was pointing towards Wes Moore, who's governor of Maryland, or Gretchen Whitmer, who is the governor of Michigan. He was pointing towards those two. I also think they would have lost, like just to be honest. But they just picked her and made her the nominee, even though there were people that were running against Joe Biden. They didn't want to entertain having an actual primary because they knew she wouldn't win in the primary. You see how this goes? They were just kind of just giving it to her. Let me just give you this. A surprise. So she is saying that Joe Biden had an ego and that it was his ego that kept him in the race. We can say that Biden had an ego. We had plenty of complaints about Joe Biden, but the way that Kamala talks about it, it almost sounds as though she feels like it was owed to her. And that's the way, like, they talk about it too. You'll see what they're going to say here. The way that the media talks about this is almost as if it was owed to Kamala Harris, that she shouldn't have to work for it. Let's just give it to her just because she checks off these boxes. Let's continue.
I was well aware of my delicate status. Lore has it that every outgoing chief of staff always tells the incoming president's chief of staff, rule number 1, watch the VP. I often learned that the president's staff was adding fuel to negative narratives that sprang up around me. When the stories were unfair or inaccurate, the president's inner circle seemed fine with it. Indeed, it seemed as if they decided I should be knocked down a little bit more.
In other words, let me just put this in, clear terms for everybody. In other words, they didn't like her ass. Okay, let's just call it that. Just put all that jargon aside. We don't need no long story. We don't need a paragraph. Long story short, they didn't like Kamala Harris. And this is not new. This is not something that we haven't heard before, where people felt like Kamala Harris was not a likable person. People who worked for her had said that she was not a likable person. They didn't like you. That's it. Again, it's almost as if she feels as though they were supposed to, that it was owed to her. Not everybody. Here's the thing. Newsflash, ladies and gents. Not everybody's going to like you. That's just life. Blow it off and move on. Okay? It just is what it is. They didn't like her.
Their thinking was zero sum. If she's shining, he's dimmed. None of them grasped that if I did well, he did well. That given the concerns about his age, my visible success as his vice president was vital. It would serve as a testament to his judgment in choosing me and reassurance that if something happened, the country was in good hands.
I just want to remind everybody that Joe Biden didn't even want to pick Kamala Harris in the first damn place. Joe Biden wanted to choose Amy Klobuchar. From what I understand, Dem leadership, Dem establishment, and donors pushed Kamala Harris on him. He didn't want her. It's kind of like, and I don't know if anyone has ever been in this situation, but some of you probably have. It is kind of like the guy who, if he has to choose between two girls, he has like his first pick and then he kind of has like his backup pick. And the first pick is no longer an option, so he goes with the backup pick. You were the backup. That's just a reality. So going into that situation, she wasn't the first choice. Truth hurts.
Well,
that is from Kamala Harris's new book.
Yeah. But I just to say, so Willie or who wants to take the jump ball here? Rev, I'll go to you. So politics. I mean, you've run for president. A couple of things here. I can understand everybody wringing their hands saying, why didn't we step in? Why didn't we intervene? I can understand the Vice President Harris doing that. But people that know Joe Biden and Jill Biden know, speaking of jump balls, nobody was going to take that ball from their hands. They were determined. I mean, I talked to a lot of people. I do a lot of people around the Bidens, and the further you get away from it, the further you realize that Joe Biden and Jill Biden were not going to be talked out of anything until the pressure was overwhelming. That's number one. Number two, vice presidents are treated badly by the president's staff. Ask Joe Biden. There were times he was treated absolutely horrifically by Barack Obama's staff. Just no respect. And sadly, that happened. So people that may be saying, oh, well, Kamala Harris is bitter. Nah, this unfortunately is a dynamic that happens in every White House.
And there's a whole show about it.
No, there's no doubt about it. One of the reasons I wanted to take the jump ball on this is I remember at the beginning, I was among those saying to Biden when he won the nomination, we want to see a black woman on the ticket. Right. He'd already committed a black woman in the Supreme Court, which he did. Right. But our argument was, well, suppose you don't get elected. We want to see one on the ticket.
Pause. That is going to rest my case with that part, ladies and gentlemen. That rests my case. Do you hear what Al Sharpton just said? He told Joe Biden, we want to see a black woman with you on the ticket. Who the hell are you, Al? Like, who just walks up to the presidential, nominee and says, we want to see a black woman with you on the ticket? Who are you? So now you got not just dim leadership, not just the donor class, but you also have the media making decisions. We want to see this. Why? Just any black woman? Is that what we just do? Just pick any black woman? I don't know. Not someone who's not qualified. Like, I don't know. Just pick any black woman because that's what we want to see. Oh my God. I'm telling you guys, this is how they end up in this situation.
And to our surprise, he chose Kamala Harris, who had debated him pretty viciously, right? According to some feeling during the thing. He suggested he was racist. That's on busing.
Good on the debate
and to
stage.
his credit, he felt she was the best candidate. Yeah. So she came in to a staff that already was saying, why did he pick her? Mm-hmm. She ambushed us. So she was not in a position to really counsel that you ought to step aside when they never really, the staff, acclimated to her. And I think that anyone that got to know President Biden as I did, know that it was him and Jill that were going to make the final decision. Right. So here's somebody that already was sort of in the midway house that was going to jump over the staff and go. I think that she was in a very peculiar position. Though the public would say, why didn't you say something? I don't think she was in a position. No, she and I wasn't. Think at the end, I don't think she was reckless. Well, I think she did what she could do.
And by the way, Joe Biden weren't listening. They weren't going to. If she went in, she could go in and say it all the time. They weren't listening. I will say, John, as we talk about Kamala Harris, there's also just.
Let me just pause here for a second. You guys weren't listening either, because Joe and Mika were running cover for Joe Biden for a long time, a long time. Even when they knew that Joe Biden was not competent, they came onto that show and told you that he was. They lied straight to the viewers' faces to let them think Joe Biden still got it. He's good to go. We will always back and support Joe Biden. And it wasn't until after that awful debate when they got the green light that it was okay to criticize him now so that they could push in Kamala. Then they said, yeah, we love Joe Biden. Let me say how he does it. We just love Joe Biden. I don't know. His voice is weird, but just love Joe Biden. They said they loved him so much, but they were like, it may be time for him to pass on the baton. But they ran cover for him for a long time.
The truth too. Early on, she did herself no favors. I mean, she had a terrible time with her staff the first year or two. It was the White House was having to do triage on her staffing problems. Everybody leaving. So she had a rocky start, but she certainly leveled out and started doing, I think, very well.
Because they did not like her, because she was not good to work for. That has been the rumor mill for a long time, that she is not a nice person to work for.
And stepped up during the campaign in an unbelievable way.
By the way, that's the thing that's always forgotten. She was like, I remember calling her one time going, I I wasn't sure. You're up on stage. You look like Evita, when she's going to like 15,000 people events and they're all screaming and going crazy. And I was like, never saw that coming.
Yeah, she found her voice in the vice presidency. People around Biden even grudgingly admit that around when the Dobbs decision came down, that's when she really stepped up.
Right.
And then ran as good of a campaign as she could have. Most people believe in those 107 days. Yeah.
With Trump?
No, she didn't run as good of a campaign as she could have. This whole thing is an effort to rehabilitate Kamala Harris's reputation. This book tour that she's going, and like I said, they all write a book. Right? Hillary wrote one, etc. But this is to rehabilitate Kamala Harris's reputation. That's really what this is, because things didn't work out the way that they wanted it to. The media gaslit American voters into believing that Kamala was doing way better than she actually was. Her own campaign team admitted that after she lost, that they didn't understand why the media was showing these polls that she was doing so well, because all the polls that they saw internally showed that was never the case. So you guys led people on with this lie, which is why your ratings tanked after that. All of them did, except for Fox News. Of course, Fox News wasn't saying she was doing well, but you guys misled the voters. The voters were disappointed when she lost the way that she lost. And then we're like, whoa, maybe we shouldn't listen to you guys, etc. And then on top of that, she wasn't a strong candidate. No, she didn't have the full time to run like the other candidates did, but she also wasn't a strong candidate. She never separated herself from Joe Biden. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes. One of the ways that she could have done that was by taking a different position on Gaza, saying you're going to withhold the arms, saying you're going to withhold the money to Israel. But she wasn't willing to do that. And hold on to that piece, because there's something she said about that in the book as well. Hold on to it.
And had a strong debate performance. She also writes in the book, certainly there's, as Mika just read, questions there about Biden's decision to run, but she also addresses the other part, like, did she think he was capable of holding the office? And she says this: Joe Biden was a smart guy with long experience and deep conviction. On his worst day, he was more deeply knowledgeable, more capable of exercising judgment, and far more compassionate than Donald Trump on his best. But she does say, but at age 81, Joe got tired. I don't believe it was incapacity. If I believe that, I would have said so. Mm-hmm. As loyal as I am to President Biden, I am more loyal to my country.
Mike,
he started to lose his mind too. It's not just Joe got tired. He also started to lose his mind. I want to show you what she said in that book about Gaza. And that'll save you time or money if you wanted to buy the book, because I ain't buying that damn book. But if you look on social media, you can see some of the text here. Bree shared this. She said, I'm sorry if Biden was actively sabotaging your campaign and you still chose not to break from him. That makes you look worse, not better, especially given the stakes were not just an election, but a genocide. So let me show you. She's responding to this tweet here. Some of the things that were highlighted. Listen to this. Worse, I often learned that the president's staff was adding fuel to negative narratives that sprang up around me. One narrative that took a stubborn hold was that I had a chaotic office and unusually high staff turnover during my first year. Again, like I said, they said she was not easy to work with. Let's get to the Gaza part here. Joe was already polling badly on the age issue, with roughly 75% of voters saying he was too old to be an effective president. Then he started taking on water for his perceived blank check to Benjamin Netanyahu in Gaza. So look at how she worded this, right? Or she probably has a ghostwriter that helps her with the stuff. Perceived blank check. So even the way she's talking about it is like, oh, this is just something people thought, but, it wasn't actually true. No, it was true. When the polls indicated that I was getting more popular, the people around him didn't like the contrast that was emerging. Let's go on here. We get to the crisis in Gaza. Desperate people had been shot when they swarmed a food truck And I spoke of families reduced to eating leaves or animal feed, women prematurely giving birth with little or no medical care, and children dying from malnutrition and dehydration. I reiterated my strong support for Israel's security and called on Hamas to release the hostages and accept the ceasefire agreement then on the table. So again, not distinguishing yourself from Biden, right? Like she's not separating herself from Biden. I also called on Israel for greater access to aid. It was a speech that had been vetted and approved by the White House and the National Security Council. It went viral and the West Wing was displeased. I was castigated for apparently delivering it too well. So here's the thing. This part here about calling for greater access to aid. Biden said that too. This is what I was saying about her not distancing herself from Joe Biden. But the point she's saying here is that the West Wing wasn't happy because she delivered the speech too well. Their thinking was zero sum. If she's shining, then he's dimmed. None of them grasped that if I did it well, he did well. So, and you saw that other part there. So here's the part here. Since she mentioned Gaza, right? Part of the reason why Kamala Harris did not win is because she lost the youth vote. And part of the reason she lost the youth vote was because of Gaza. It's hard to even think of an explanation other than the economy. That's a big one. But I mean, you can't even say, because remember, they came together and they said, okay, we're going to erase some of the student loan debt for people, which would greatly benefit like the youth vote. But the Gaza thing is what turned a lot of them away. Kamala Harris had one job. All she had to do was distance herself from Joe Biden. But what this shows you, and what this is not the win that Kamala thinks it is. I think she thinks this is a win writing this in this book. No, what this shows you is that Kamala Harris wasn't willing to stand on her own 2 feet. It shows you that the moment that Kamala Harris got pressure, she backed down. That's who you want to be as a president. The moment she got pressured from the West Wing, she decided to back down. She was more concerned about what they thought and how they felt about all this. So this is what I was talking about. You have choices, right? The truth hurts. They can be upset with you. They can be displeased. So what? This is one thing I will say about Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care if certain people in his administration get upset with him. Now, Israel, that's a whole other story. But you had a choice and you chose to do what was going to please the West Wing because they were mad at you. So what? And I don't know whoever was advising Kamala Harris, but she obviously did not have good advisors. These are the kind of things, ladies and gentlemen, that we have to start talking about. And especially for women who are watching, if you're a woman and you're watching this, one of the things I'm going to tell you is this. Whenever you work in a position and let's say there may not be as many women there, right? But and the men are in leadership or whatever. I'm going to tell you a little secret, something that I learned a long time ago. The moment that they express disappointment with you and you buckle, they got you. If Kamala Harris would have pushed back and said, I am the right person for this time, Joe, you've had your time, I'm the right person. If she would have stood up for herself, they would have had more respect for her. But the moment that she goes, oh, well, they got mad at me. Oh, no, that type of thing. The moment she went onto The View and she was questioned, would you do anything differently than Biden? And she said, no, I wouldn't, because they told her, remember, no daylight, kid, no difference, no difference. That's what they told you, but that doesn't mean you had to do it. And I say this, and this is a message to send out to the younger people who may be entering the workforce, because this is a little trick that you learn along the way. They're not going to tell you this up front. There are going to be times in the work environment where you're going to be faced with this. Okay, They told me this is what they want me to do. But do you have to do it? Kamala Harris wasn't going to be, they weren't going to kick her to the side as VP if she didn't listen to them. You see what I mean? At that point in the game, they weren't going to do that. Obviously, that would also cause some issues. So they weren't going to just say, okay, you're not going to be vice president anymore. They weren't going to do that. So you have to ask yourself this question. Do you have to do it? And the answer is, regardless of what they wanted you to say, when she got on that stage on The View and they said, would you do anything differently from Biden? If she felt that she would have, which she now apparently is saying she would have, then that's what she should have said. I don't give a damn what they tell you, they advise you to say. People break script all the time. It's called ad-libbing. So they are trying to rehabilitate Kamala Harris because this loss is different from the Hillary Clinton loss. And I'm going to tell you why. Hillary Clinton's loss was different because Hillary was still able to win a swing state. That's the reality. Hillary Clinton's loss was different because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and lost the Electoral College. But the Kamala loss is a whole other different thing. She didn't win any swing states and she did not win the popular vote. So the Dems lost the popular vote for the first time in a long time. It's an embarrassment for the Democratic Party. So their goal now is to try to find a way. How can we get people to understand she's this great person and the person for the moment and da-da-da. And Kamala Harris is probably embarrassed too. So you just keep that in mind because she does have dates scheduled for this book tour. I just want you guys to remember all this when you start to see these clips and everything of her on this book tour. Okay? This is a rehabilitation tour. That's what this is really all about. Just like when Hillary Clinton sat there and she read her book and she said, I remember that little girl who wanted to just be president one day. I wanted to be the first female president of the United States. And then she started like crying and all that shit. That's what this is about. Okay. Biden was an asshole. Don't get me wrong. But for Kamala to pretend that she did everything right, for Morning Joe to pretend that she did everything right is disingenuous. And you shouldn't fall for that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.